Hello there and welcome. My name is Michael Fudge, and this is a new series of mine where I will teach you how to program using the Java programming language. My goal here is to teach you how to learn computational thinking, that is, how to solve problems with computer code. Yes, we'll use Java, but I'm hoping that the lessons covered will help you understand how to program in other languages as well, not just Java. My design and my goal here is about 20 lessons, no more than 30 minutes each, that cover a variety of important topics necessary to learning the discipline of computer programming. This very first lesson, Lesson 0, is really just a meta lesson. We'll use this lesson to help you get your computer set up with the software that you need to start programming in Java. Our agenda for today is to take a look at the Programming in Java series, help you get your environment set up, and then I'll show you how I structure each of the 20 lessons, and then I'll give you a small tour of how you can get around NetBeans, which is the Java programming environment that we'll be using. Here's a list of the software that you're going to need to complete these lessons. Mainly you're going to need 2 pieces of software and some source code examples that I've written. The first thing you'll need is the Java Developers Kit Standard Edition, and that's this top link here. The second thing you'll need is NetBeans, which is an editor, compiler, and debugger, all integrated into one. It's called an Integrated Development Environment. You can get that at this URL here. And then the last thing you'll need are my source code examples. I'm going to jump out to my virtual machine and show you how to install and set up all of these things. I'll be using Windows, but the procedure should be similar on a different computer like Linux or Mac. Okay, here we are in my Windows virtual machine, and I'll jump out to the desktop. I've copied and pasted what I need in here so that I can just grab the URLs and throw them in there. Point of note, Java SE that I'll be installing, the current version is 7 Update 25. By the time you watch this lesson, there might be a later version. That's fine. You always want to install the latest version for security purposes. So here's the Java site, the way it looks right now. And what you want to do is you need the Java Developers Kit, the JDK. I'm going to click download here. You have to accept the license agreement, which I will do. And then download the version specific to your operating system. Mine is 64-bit Windows right here. But you can see they have versions for Mac OS, for Linux, etc. So I'm going to download that. And I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to watch the progress. Okay, my download is finished, and I clicked on the executable to run it, and now user account control is taking over. I'm just going to click yes here, and it's going to I'm going to just walk you through the install process. It's pretty straightforward. You're just going to click next a bunch of times, and that's it. So I'm just going to accept all the defaults here. Not really particular as to where things go, and you don't need to be. What this is doing right now is it's installing the Java language and the Java platform, or Java framework as it's known as. Actually, the language and the framework together represent the platform. The language is the computer, what we're going to program in, obviously, and then the framework contains libraries of code that perform various purposes, like reading and writing to the console, reading and writing to files, the ability to communicate over the network, for example, graphics libraries, etc. So throughout the course, we'll be using some of these other libraries that are part of the Java platform. I'm going to click next here. Soon to be 3,000,000,001 devices running Java. Ha ha ha. So this is going to finish up here. I'm probably going to pause the video until this is done. This is the boring part of the install. All right, looks like it's done. Okay, I have Java installed. So the next thing I want to do is I want to put NetBeans on here. The NetBeans integrated development environment for Java requires that you have Java installed, and I've already installed Java, so I'll have no problem putting NetBeans on here. Here's a page for the NetBeans download. You can see that you can get it for various platforms other than Windows. There's Linux and Mac OS X. I'm downloading 7.3.1, which is the latest version, but again, you might watch this video and a newer version might be out, so you always want to get the latest version. And since I installed Java SE, this is the version of NetBeans I'm going to grab right here. Just going to click download, and again, I'm not going to bore you with watching it download. Okay, the download has finished, and I've clicked on the executable, and now user account control again is up here. I'm just going to click yes. It's going to begin the install. All right, I'm going to click Next. This install seems to take a bit longer than the other install for some reason. Just going to accept. I want to put JUnit on here. This is a testing framework. We're going to use this later on in one of the future lessons. I'm just going to accept this. It found the JDK that I installed earlier. See that? Okay, this takes a little bit of time, so again, I'm just going to pause the video, and then when it's all done, I'll come back. See you in a bit. Okay, it's done installing, so I'm going to click Finish, and let's give it a launch now. NetBeans. Here's my NetBeans IDE. It's called an integrated development environment because you can not only edit your programs, but you can also run and debug your programs. Our next thing that we need to do here is we need to get our code samples. So first I'll show you where the code samples are online. They're up here in GitHub, and you can see they're structured by lesson. There's different numbers of lessons here. If you go inside a lesson, there's a series of examples and exercises that you can follow. I'll talk more about this in a bit. Important thing is, how do you get these examples down into NetBeans? And I'm going to show you how to do that next. So under Team, there's Git, and it says Clone. And the URL you want to put into Clone is right here. Copy. And I paste it into the repository URL, and I put .git at the end of it. And I don't need to log in. And hit Next. It's going to read the repository off of GitHub. There's only one branch, master, so you want to take that branch. Now you have to specify where you want to put all of this code. It defaults to a folder under Documents, but I'm going to put this in a much simpler place. I'm just going to grab my hard disk C, and I'm just going to make a folder here called Sample Code. And I'm just going to put Learn Java in the sample code folder, hit Finish, and it's going to begin copying my code down from GitHub onto my computer. This takes a bit, and when it's done, you'll see this clone completed. Do you want to open a project? I'm just going to click Close. So you might be saying, what did you just do with the cloning? So let me show you here. I'm going to open up the folders on my computer. I'm going to go to that sample code folder, and you'll see there's a Learn Java folder, and then under there are all the lessons. Now currently there's just 14 lessons, but eventually there will be 20. So the question becomes, when I download these lessons and I need to go get more lessons, what do? I just go back up here to Team, I go to Git, to Repository Browser, and I can click Fetch. And that will pull down the latest code. So you can always refetch the code whenever you want, and that'll pull down all the newer changes and additions to the code base. Next, let's talk about the lessons themselves and how they're structured, and then also I'll give you a tour of how you get around NetBeans. So let's start by opening up one of these examples. I'm going to go to Open Project, and I'm going to browse for that folder. Sample Code, Learn Java, Lesson 1. And I'll just grab one of these. I'm going to grab Interactive Hello. And here's my project, Interactive Hello. Just to show you, I can open up another project. I'm going to open up Tic-Tac-Toe Board. So you see I have two projects open. And under any one of these projects, there is a series of code files under source packages, and this one has one code file called Interactive Hello. Now if you notice, you look carefully, this one has a red exclamation mark on it. As you open these projects, the NetBeans IDE is building the Java, and what building means is it's taking the source code that you see here, and it's compiling it, that is rearranging it, if you will, into a format that is understandable by the computer so that the Java program itself can execute it. So we usually call that's called building. You can manually build at any time. Under run, it says build project. You can also clean and build, which erases any intermediary files that are the result of the build and then builds again. You look down here, it says it's rebuilding. When it builds a Java file, it creates a jar file, and then when you run the program, the java.exe or the Java executable is running the jar file. You cannot run the Java files. They must first be built into jar files. And you cannot build a jar file if there are errors in it. For example, this will not build because there is now an error in here. And when I see an error in my IDE, it tells me exactly the line that has the error, and there's an exclamation mark that gives me a hint. This is the advantage of using an integrated development environment over just using something like Notepad. Sure, I could take all this and I could just type it up in my favorite text editor, but I won't have any of the wonderful advantages that the integrated development environment gives me. So if I try to build this, I will get an error message down here. And this is typically the error message you would get if you tried to build this at the command line. And it tells you what the error is. Error expected this. You're expecting a semicolon here. In the next lesson, we'll talk about what all these things mean: package and import and public class and public static void main. We'll get that out of the way. But what I want to show you right now is, now that you have these projects up, how do I go ahead and run them? How do I go and see the output when they run? And how can I debug them? So let's start with a run. When you want to run, click this green arrow up here. You can also go up to run and do run project, or you can click or press F6. That will run. Whenever you run a project, it has output. And so this particular project is running, and the output window is up, and it says enter your name. So I will do that. And then it just says hello Michael. So all that this program does is it asks you for your name, and then it says hello your name. It's a very simple program. But you can see when you run it, it has some form of output. Some of the programs that we'll write will have a graphical output. They will open up a new window in the operating system and display the output there. First couple of programs we write will not do that. They will all run from within the console. You don't need to use the graphical interfaces to learn how to program. The console works just fine. Let's talk next about how you can debug the program. Maybe you want to run this program a line at a time, and the way you do that is under debug. It says step into. There's also step over, which is F8. Step into is F7. We'll start with a step into, and that will start running it and debug it. And now the green line represents which line of code I'm about to run, and I automatically get a list of what's happening in the program. That's called the program state, and you can look at the various components of the program, whether they're variables or classes. And now if I want to keep stepping through this, I want to use step over, which was the F8 key, or I could just go up to debug and choose step over. Or I could also click on this here, which is step over, and that's going to run it a line at a time. So it first did this line, now it's going to run line 21. And if I look at my output window, I can see what's happening. Now on line 21 it says, enter your name. And now I'm on line 23, and it prints my name. And that's the end of the program. Debugging through stepping is very useful when you're trying to catch errors in your code. Sometimes, you can figure out your problems just by looking at the code, but with more advanced programming logic, a lot of times you'll have to debug it. Another thing you can do is you can set a breakpoint. Watch this. I could click over here and put a breakpoint down. And what that means is it will run until it gets to here, then it will stop. So if I go to debug and I debug this project, it will execute the project and stop right where the breakpoint is. And then from there I can inspect what's going on with my variables, or maybe what I want to do is start stepping over from this point, etc. So we'll use all these techniques, and I can always clear my breakpoint later on. I disabled it. Now I'm going to turn it off. So that's that. Hopefully that explains how to run the program, how to see the output of the program, and how to debug and set breakpoints in the program. All of these things you will see again, but I just wanted to give you the nickel tour of it while we start. The advantage of the integrated development environment cannot be overlooked, because if you were to do this all through text files and from the command line, sure, you could probably get away with doing it and it wouldn't be that bad, but I think you're going to be much more productive using a product like NetBeans or Eclipse instead of just using Notepad. But you certainly do not need a product like NetBeans in order to learn to program in Java. A final word on each of these lessons. Every single lesson in the Learn Java series has the same structure. Part of each lesson has code samples. These code samples are things that I will type during the screencasts, and anything that I type and save in the screencast I put up on GitHub so that you can run it yourself so that you don't have to type it in. Certainly there's a lot of benefits with following along with what I'm doing and kind of parroting my movements. That's a great way to learn to program. But some of you might get the point of what I'm doing and just want to run the output of the sample that I built in the lesson. So in each lesson there's the code samples. Also, beyond the code samples are what I call the On Your Own series, and there's two sets of examples here. One is the debug this, and the second is the challenge activity. Debug this is a Java project that has errors in it, because one of the best ways to learn and become a good programmer is to fix errors in existing code. Rather than starting from scratch and trying to get your head around how do I solve the problem, the problem's already in front of you, but it's broken, and then you have to go through and try to figure out how to fix it. It's a really great way to learn how to code through debugging. The other parts that are in each lesson, there's usually two challenge activities. These challenge activities are programs that you write on your own, or program segments that you write on your own. Generally the format of these is I'll give you a base project with a little bit of code in it, and then you'll have to fill in the blanks to solve the problem. As we progress through the lessons, these challenge activities get more and more robust as your knowledge base of Java and programming in general expand. To give you a quick example, here I am back in NetBeans, and I have Interactive Hello opened up. I can close this project, and then I'm going to open up another project, and you'll see in any one of these lesson folders, lesson 1, lesson 2, there are examples, there's a debug this, and there's two challenge activities. And the examples, those are all working. So I can open up any one of these examples, like I can open up interactive common data types, and I can just run this example, and it should just run just fine. There's no errors in it. And you can see down here it's running enter student's name, Mike, enter student's GPA 4.0, enter student's age 40, is a student female, false. Mike is 40 years old, he has a 4.0 GPA. Cool. So I can run any of these examples that I have up here. The challenge activities and the debug this, you have to finish those and get those working. In every lesson there's a solution folder, and inside the solution folder are the answers to the debug this and the challenge activities. This is so that if you're working on your own and you get stuck, you can kind of take a peek at the answers and see if you did it right, if you solved the problem correctly. When you open up any one of these debug, like for example, when I open up the debug this exercise, in the code, there's always instructions at the top. And these instructions will usually have an overview and then an example of what it's like when the program runs correctly. So you have a way to kind of reverse engineer the program by looking at the sample output that the program should provide to you. If you get stuck and you can't figure it out, you can always open up the answer under solutions. I should find debug this solution. And so I'm going to close this one here. So I have debug this, which is the work I'm supposed to be doing to fix the problem. And then here's the solution. So if I want to see the solution working, I can always just open this up, click on this one and run it. and it says enter a value in inches, 23 inches. 23 inches equals 1 feet, 11 inches. Cool. But if I run this one, it won't work because there's errors. But that's my job, is to fix this and get it working like this one. So the solutions are nice because if you get stuck, you can always take a peek at the code. And it's a great way to help you learn. Well, that's all I have for you today. That concludes Lesson 0. Hopefully you got yourself set up with NetBeans and Java, and also gained access to the sample code that we'll need to complete the rest of the lessons. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to post your messages in YouTube. Thank you very much, and we'll see you for the next lesson. Bye.